Okay, we are going. Megan, if you would take roll, call us back in.
Yes. I will now call roll. Megan Johns here. Brenna Lagarde. Not yet. Brad Hendershot.
I'm here.
Corey Stump. Not yet. Samantha Parnham.
Here.
Marie McMahon.
Here.
Jennifer White.
Here.
So we're just waiting on Corey and Brenna.
Correct. Corey, are you with us? Brenna, are you with us? Okay, we're still waiting on Brenna and Corey to return from break. Corey, you're back with us. So we're just waiting for Brenna.
Thank you.
Brenna, are you with us? Better?
It's a great exercise. Quiet.
Brenna, are you with us?
Yes. Sorry. Here I am.
No, that's totally okay. I think we're all back together, and we are back in public session. So I believe we are on item 7, which is a discussion about the rule for the licensing of behavior analysts and assistant behavior analysts.
This is McMahon. It's my understanding that that currently we're using the current role is the based on 2014 requirements, and so it seems that maybe discussing whether or not we want to update the requirements to the 2022 requirements.
This is White. I agree that updating to the 2022 requirements is definitely important.
This is Megan. I agree.
And this is Ann,
Greta.
your analyst. I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify. Is the board referring to the 2022 BACB requirements?
Yes, sorry about that.
Please, I believe I interrupted Samantha. I'm very sorry.
It wasn't me, so not sure it was.
Sorry.
This is Megan. What do we need to do to be able to update to the 2022 requirements?
Well, that's a great question. If the board decides that what they would like to do is to update the current licensing requirements to the January 1, 2022 BACB requirements, we would have to enter rulemaking. And we can certainly do that. As I wasn't sure what the board was going to decide today, I didn't bring any materials in support of that action. So if that's what you would like to do, I hope you have your calendars nearby. We would need to set up you can either go with your January 2023 meeting to talk about the rulemaking process, or if you want to expedite, we could add a 2022 meeting for much later in the year. I would have to prepare all the rulemaking materials, and we could focus on that at that meeting. So it's up to the board if you would like another meeting in 2022, or if you'd like to add this to the January 2023 agenda. And then I would bring proposed language you could look at, a possible rule schedule with a timeline on it. How do members feel about those options?
This is Brad. I have a question.
Of course.
I'm concerned that pre-service BCBAs who finish their program under the new requirements will encounter a barrier to getting licensed through the state, through the BARB. I'm wondering when we're going to hit that threshold so I'm wondering if there is a need to not wait until January if this isn't somewhat time sensitive, because I just wouldn't want folks to hit a block because we hadn't updated the language. I don't know. I haven't mapped that out, but it's a concern that I have.
Okay, so your concern would be that their documentation. I'm trying to nail your concern down.
There's those new requirements went into effect. They're in effect now, aren't they?
Yes, the new the BACB requirements that I presented in the materials went into effect on January 1, 2022. There was some documents within that for folks that were, say, going through the educational path now that were they started their process. And so there's some transition documents in there. The BACB is saying, okay, if you're currently going through an educational program or getting ready to take your exam, there's some transitional documents in there. Is that what your concern was related to?
I didn't want us to, I don't know if I'm articulating this well, maybe someone can help me, but I didn't want us to end up in a situation where somebody had completed their program based on the updated BACB requirements and then not be able to get their LBA through the BARB because we hadn't yet aligned with the 2022. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
if I may interrupt, this is Heather. I think what Brad is expressing that he'd prefer to meet sooner rather than later on this issue to avoid any problems with having it be a later discussion. So I think his concern is to meet sooner rather than later. Is that right, Brad?
Yes, I mean, if there's a rationale for that, I haven't mapped
Sure.
it out to know, but it seems like there might be some time sensitivity to this.
Okay, well, no, that's absolutely up to you. If you would like to meet sooner rather than later, is there any other thoughts from board members?
This is McMahon. I concur. I'd rather sort of, I think having a timely discussion is important for this 2022 rule.
This is White. I also agree since those BACB requirements are already in effect. I think meeting as soon as possible would be best.
All right, so we're thinking something this year. I hope everyone has their calendars in front of them. Is this something that we can talk about a date now? Do we still hold Friday to be the optimal day, or are we open to other days?
Friday is a good day for me personally. I don't know how the rest of the group feels.
Good for me too, but I'm open to other days.
Okay.
I can be flexible.
Fridays are good for me, but yeah, I can make other days work if we need to.
I'm open to other days as well.
Okay. We have, I'm checking the office calendar too, because we have, 17 boards and programs now, and our calendars get really soaked up quick. And I don't want to pick a date and then be like, whoops, there's another board meeting that day. Because then acting director Bob will get on me about not looking at my calendar. Okay. So we have August. We have, it looks like we have October 21st as a Friday that's open. If board members would be so kind as to check that day.
This is Samantha. The 21st is fine for me.
October 21st, we've got Samantha's okay.
I'm okay.
Brenna?
I'm booked on that morning. Sorry. Up till noon.
Okay. What about everybody else?
21st works for me. This is Corey Stemp.
This is McMahon. That date works for me.
Okay.
This is Megan. That day works for me.
This
Okay,
is White. That day works for me.
did we hear from Samantha?
Yeah, this is Parnham. That day works for me.
Okay, so it sounds like the board is available with the exception of Brad. So do we want to shoot for 9 a.m. on the 21st of October?
Just McMahon, that sounds good.
Okay. So I don't believe that we need to vote on the date. We can just plan on a special meeting. This will not be a meeting that includes reports or anything else. This will be mainly focused on rulemaking for 824-030-0010 and 824-030-0020. Okay, so we'll bring a schedule and we will bring proposed language and we can talk about that there. Well, I guess 8 we do. I guess we can vote on whether to enter rulemaking. So I guess we do need a vote. So if I could have a motion and a second, I apologize. This is somebody new driving the bus.
Yeah. This is McMahon. So moved to go into enter into rulemaking.
Okay. I need a second, please.
This is Heather. If you could make that specific as to what you're entering rulemaking on, is it to adopt the BACB January 1st, 2022 credential?
Yes, sorry. I forward to go into rulemaking to adopt the BACB's credential with the January 1st, 2022 requirements.
And that's McMahon. Okay.
McMahon.
Mhm. And I need a second, please, and then a roll call vote.
This is Brenna, so seconded.
A motion has been made. I'll call roll. Megan Johns, aye. Brenna Lagarde,
Aye.
Brad Hendershot,
Aye.
Corey Stump,
Aye.
Samantha Parnham,
Hi.
Marie McMahon,
Aye.
and Jennifer White.
Aye.
Okay. So we will set up a meeting for October 21st. Okay, so our next, oh, I'm sorry. There was there some additional conversation that needed to take place, or are we all good?
This is Megan. I know that in our board meeting materials, there was also some documents on the QABA. Did we want to talk about that at all today, or just wait until after we enter rulemaking about the 2022?
Well, that would be up to the board to decide. There's some options available. If you feel comfortable discussing the equivalency portion of that today, we can certainly undertake that conversation. If the board doesn't feel they have enough information today, we could, an option might be to get a subject matter expert to look at the materials. How does the board feel about what they might need to have this discussion?
This is McMahon. I'm not sure that I have all the information that I need. I would welcome a subject matter expert to compare those findings and present them to the BARB.
Okay. I would have to check and see if we have a contracted subject matter expert.
So this is Brenna. So just taking a step back, as I recall, I think we have a threshold question in determining, what to do with this request, and that we should decide whether we want to continue having a professional credential as a requirement for licensure. So I think maybe we start there, right?
Okay, yeah.
Sorry about that. Yes. This is McMahon. I think we should continue to have a credential as a licensure requirement.
So this is Brenna.
Farnham, I agree.
I'm not a BCBA. I'm not, I'm a member of I'm the, consumer, I think, voice on the BARB. I don't have any professional stake in whether we have a credential or not, but I strongly feel that it's in the public's interest that we continue to have a credential. These are professionals who work with a very sensitive population, and I think the credentialing requirement provides a very important quality control that is in the public's best interest.
This is White. I agree with that.
All right, so having decided that, sorry, anybody else want to?
This is Corey Stump. I was going to agree as well.
This is Megan. I also agree.
Do we need to have a vote to maintain the credentialing requirement, or is that, since that's where we're at, is a determination that that's what we're feeling like sufficient? Anybody?
So this is Heather. I think that you're fine in that regard, especially since you voted on adopting the BACB credential with the January 1st requirement. So I think with your discussion and that vote that you don't need an additional vote, just saying that you want to keep a credential in your licensing rule.
Okay. And so then it's also been brought to our attention that our rules currently require as that credential the 2014 BACB credential, and the 2022 credential is significantly different. So as a board, we want to consider, as we just said, having that updated. And we just talked about that, and we set a date. And so the next question is, in light of that decision to consider that, should we now consider whether the QABA credential is equivalent to the 2022 rule and the 2014 BACB rule, or should we table that discussion, right? Like that's our next our next decision.
This is Megan. Personally, I feel like if we're already going to change the requirements, it makes sense to table that discussion until we have finished that one.
This
Okay.
is Farnham. I feel like it makes sense to potentially, I don't know if we can split it, but can we look at the equivalency of the 2022 BCBA requirements compared to the QABA requirements and table the comparison of the 2014 one?
This is
I mean, I think
Megan.
Go ahead,
Can
Megan.
we do
Sorry.
that if it's not already in rule? Because we haven't entered rulemaking because that's going to be a different discussion. So can we actually make a judgment based on something that's not quite in rule yet?
Well, I think we could look at if we have the information we need to make this comparison, right? We could look at whether the QABA standard or certification standard is equivalent to the 2014 BACB standard and the 2022 BACB standard. And if it's not, based on the information that we've got, then I think we can conclude that it's not equivalent and go forward with our rulemaking limited to adoption of the 2022 standard, right? Otherwise, like I think we can make an equivalency decision of one form or another today if we have the right information, right?
This is Megan. I mean, I agree with you, Brenna. I mean, I would just think we would need to compare it to the 2014 rather than the 2022 stuff until we put that into rule, but I could be mistaken. And if we want to do that, then we would need to have in the meeting agenda documents, we only have the 2022 requirements. We don't have the 2014 BACB requirements that were in there, so we would probably need that documentation.
Well, that's something that I believe I can send to the board if you guys can stand by. I think that's something we can get you. Can you give us a moment to get that to you?
Yeah, I think we can, can't we?
Thank you.
Okay, hey, now everybody monitor your emails. We can certainly get that document to you.
Brenna, thanks for keeping us all smiling.
Okay, the 2014 documents are on the way. I appreciate everybody's patience. Like I said, I'm a bit of a new bus driver here.
I think we're all in that boat to some extent. So we can consider equivalency to the 2022 requirements or the 2022 BACB requirement as well, right? And I think Anne has done some legwork in that regard, as is indicated by the public materials. Anne, do you want to talk us through what you found in doing this comparison?
Sure. Again, I was, depending on, I reached out to the QABA and they provided me with their January 1, 2022 handbook and their materials. I asked the organization what their status was for licensure in other states. And while it's my understanding that one of their certificates received a license in Virginia, that as far as the credential being named in rule, saying, either statutes or rules, not through a side path such as accepted as a national, certifying body, that kind of thing. Actually named, I asked the CEO for any states that actually specifically include the QABA in their statutes or rules for the purposes of licensure, and if there were any, to provide documentation. And my email was not responded to. New Jersey decided to not accept the credential for the purposes of licensing due to the fact that their statutes require nonprofit status. And the QABA is not a nonprofit. I also found some documentation that Texas was considering the same, and they found for their requirements that the QABA was non-equivalent. And I watched meetings with Kansas, and they decided not to accept the credential for the purposes of licensing. So that is what I found. I also reached out to some community, I actually reached out to Paul Trudell, many of you know Mr. Trudell, and asked him if he knew any parents whose children received services from certificates from this organization, and I did not hear back from Mr. Trudell. So I tried to ask associations, other states, if there is a gap in my research, I would be happy to fill that for any board member that has wants additional information.
I note, this is Brenna, I note that on page 84 of the public materials, you reached out to the QABA credentialing board and received a response which states that Virginia and New Jersey accept the QBA in their language or like as a certification credential, and that does not appear to actually be true. The response from the QABA also states that they're in their final approval process with Texas, which appears to me at least to be at least facially misleading. And I don't think this bears on our decision in terms of comparing equivalency, but I do note that factual discrepancy in the reporting by this organization. So so in terms of determining equivalency, right, it's a fairly straightforward process wherein we decide whether the credentialing requirements by QABA are equivalent to the BCBA, at least we'll start with 2022 requirements, right? Meaning that if the QABA requires fewer hours in any particular category, then they're not equivalent. And then I thought it was interesting that it looks like Texas did exactly this comparison. And it's in the public materials, and it doesn't appear that Texas's math is wrong. It appears that the numbers are different, that the QABA requirements are less rigorous and therefore not equivalent to the BACB's requirements as of 2022. Does anybody have any, anything I'm missing there? And as I said, like I'm a public member of the board, so I don't have a dog in this fight, and I'm not as familiar, of course, with these requirements as the rest of you are, but members.
Can you remind us which page the QABA require? Oh, I think I just found it. Never mind. I'm sorry. Is it 88?
So the Texas summary begins on page 135.
Oh, the Texas summary. Okay, 135.
Yeah, the public PDF. Yeah.
And that's compared to 2022, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it? I think so.
Yes, that's compared to 2022.
Okay.
This is Megan. I agree with you, Brenna. I also think it's interesting that the QAB requirements in terms of coursework want to have autism core knowledge, and the BACB is also very specific with behavior analytic knowledge, not necessarily autism specific, which I do think that that's really important to know, because not all of our clients are only have an autism diagnosis, nor is ABA specifically designed for children with autism, although that is our predominant service industry. Most of our clients have dual diagnosis, et cetera.
One thing I wanted to note as well, this is Corey Stump, looking at the examination requirements. The QABA exam is an at-home exam with 100 questions that are graded. So you're not in a environment where you are necessarily testing your own knowledge, where you could actually be sitting there with an open book. And I think that's pretty important as well to note.
Yeah. I also note that the current BCBA standards require 315 hours of coursework as compared to 250 for the QABA credential. The QABA credential doesn't require any hours in the philosophical underpinnings of applied behavior analysis, which, I think is important because it and in my view, it gets at, the underpinnings of the ethical practice, as well as, the sort of deeper connection, I think, with the, the client's life.
This is McMahon. To piggyback off that, I believe that there's a difference in the number of CE ethics hours is 5 compared to what we have. And given that for our board, we are spending a lot of time talking about the ethics and concerns for patients, it seems very relevant to the discussion.
So I note also that the supervised fieldwork requirements under the BCBA credentials are more rigorous, more extensive, resulting in a higher number of supervised hours, as well as a higher number of hours overall to get credentialed into the BCBA paths.
To note on that as well, for the experience hours, Brenna, this is Corey Stump. The individuals who would be qualified to supervise do not necessarily need to be a QBA or a BCBA, but instead could be anyone else who is I think it was a licensed healthcare professional who practices within their scope. That could be anyone. It looks like, based on that explanation. Not necessarily someone who has experience with ABA.
This is White. It also looks like with the QBA, you can spread out your supervision percentage over 3 months instead of monthly supervision, as well as it does not seem to have the same restrictions in place for group supervisions and how what standards need to be met for group supervision, such as like a maximum number of participants.
So it's my understanding, right, that we're evaluating equivalency. We're not, you know, casting aspersions on any particular path, right? But we're to establish, you know, that unless the QBA credential is equivalent, then we, you know, as a matter of statutory exercise, can't adopt it. And it doesn't seem that they're equivalent with respect to the 2022 BACB standards anyway.
And looking at these as well, just simply, I'm comparing to the 2014 right now, but in terms of the experience for a QABA, it states here for the 1,500 hours of oversight. 900 hours must be in a supervisory role or program development, and up to 600 hours may be one-on-one direct care, but direct care hours are not necessary. So you don't necessarily even need to be with a client to accrue these hours.
Under the QABA credential? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a significant difference between the QABA credential and the 2014 BACB rules. How about the ethics requirements under the QABA rules and the 2014 rules? Are those different?
I'm trying to find that right now. Megan, did I hear you say that they had 8 hours or 4 hours? What was it previously?
Marie mentioned earlier she saw 5, and then it looks like by the BACB standards, we required 10.
10 as of 2014?
10 as of 2014.
Okay, yeah.
So there aren't many comparisons that even match up with the 2014 requirements either.
This is McMahon. Yeah. I think while I appreciate that there's, even though not everyone we see has autism, I appreciate in some respects that for QABA, they're trying to have some directed coursework in autism, but it seems that overall the experience is not equivalent as regards to supervision, the type of direct contact we want with patients, with ethics, and with coursework. And so, I appreciate that idea, but I don't feel that it's equivalent to 2014 or 2022.
This is
I, as a consumer, I'm interested in more providers, and I certainly appreciate them bringing this to our attention, but I don't feel that I can find equivalency here.
This is what I just wanted to state. I also don't find that they are equivalent.
This is Barnum. I agree with that. I can't find equivalency.
Does anybody disagree? See lots of heads shaking. Doesn't look like anybody disagrees about that.
No, the more I'm looking, the more I see that are not equivalent.
Okay. So do we need to vote, or is further discussion warranted, do you think? Or
So this is Heather. If the board is done with its discussion, then you would want to vote on that.
Okay, so we vote on the question of whether we find, I guess, like whether we find that there is equivalency between the QABA credential and the 2014 BCBA credential, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And then also the 2022 BACB credential too. So you could either do 2 votes on that, or you could combine it. But yes, you're looking at the equivalency between QABA and the 2014 and 2022 BACB credentials.
Okay. So do we need a motion? And the motion be, do we?
No, I move this, McMahon. I move that I'm trying to figure out the wording for this. that we move to agree that the QABA requirements do not meet the threshold of or do not have equivalency to the 2014 BACB requirements. Did I word that correctly?
Well, you could, Maria, this is Anne. You could do 2 ways. You could say that the board finds that the 2014 BACB standards are non-equivalent to the QABA,
Thank you.
Or you could do both. You could say that the board finds that the Quab credential is equivalent to neither the 2014 nor the 2022 BACB standards. So it's really up to you.
Okay. I move that the board finds that Quabbin does not meet the 2014 or current 2021 standards. And we should
Second.
vote. Okay.
This is Brenna, second.
And that was the 2014 or 2022.
Yes,
And
2022.
Brenna seconded. Okay. So we would need a vote.
And
I'll
Anne,
call.
can you just clarify the motion to make sure that we all understand the motion?
Okay. So it's the motion is that the board finds that the Quaba credential, 2022 credential, is not equivalent to the BACB 2014 or January 1, 2022 requirements.
And so an I vote would mean, yes, they're not equivalent, right?
Yeah, you are voting that they are not equivalent.
And I believe there was already a second, so is that correct?
Okay.
Yep, it's for me.
Motion has been made. I'll call roll. Megan Johns, aye. Brenna Lagarde,
Aye.
Brad Hendershot,
Aye.
Corey Stump, Samantha Parnham,
Aye.
Marie McMahon,
Aye.
Jennifer White.
Aye.
Okay, so we voted. And so then we're going to take up the 2022 update at the next meeting, right? Is there anything else we need to do on this?
Not to my knowledge.
Heather, Anne, did we miss anything?
I think we're okay. I believe we have dealt with all the issues in items 6, 7, and 8. And that would take us to item 9 on the agenda, which is an executive session.
Anne,
Yes, Brad.
can I just thank you and the OHA for your professionalism and excellence in gathering that information to inform the conversation, because I was impressed by the research and the quality and depth of information that we were able to draw upon. So thank you.
Absolutely.
That's so sweet of you. No, I'm here to help and to serve in the mission of public protection. So I am pleased that I got everything that you needed to make an informed decision today. So thank you so much. And so I guess we're on to executive session on item 9, and it will require a switch over. So Megan, you have your scripts. So if you would read us into our executive session, and then we'll get the recordings all switched over.
Yes. The Behavior Analysis Regulatory Board will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602F and ORS 192.3559A and ORS 40.225 for the purpose of considering information exempt from public disclosure at 11:24 a.m. on July 29th, 2022. Representatives of the news media shall be allowed to attend the executive session by conference call and will be provided further call-in instructions shortly. The public phone line
Megan, I apologize. This is Heather. I'm just checking in whether we're on the executive session number 9, which had, I think, different statutes affiliated with it. Maybe I misheard them. Anne, can you verify that we're on executive session number 9 and the statutes?
We are on executive session number 9, and it would be pursuant to 192.662F. Do you have that one, Megan? And ORS 676595.
I
If you don't
see
have the
numbers.
Then
That's okay.
Yeah,
I think that now that we know which statutes we're under and that we're under number 9, you could go forward. I apologize for the interruption. Just wanted to clarify.
no,
Okay.
I appreciate it. I was the interruption machine today, so that was That was good. Okay, so we are now on item number 9. We have been read into executive session. Let me mute the phone line, please.